When we talk about sustainability, and it's true that we see behind this word, ultimately, many other concepts, such as those that are contained within this hashtag, since it's the hashtag chosen for the next Intermat. When we talk about sustainability and decarbonization, the other major topic is obviously, as you've gathered, consumption, reducing fuel consumption. So while electric power, as we've said, is one of the solutions, it's not the only one because it doesn't apply to all types of machinery. We must therefore consider all the other options. But where do we stand exactly on these other options? What do we mean by biofuels, for example, when applied to the construction and public works sector? We're going to open this file, if you will, with our next two guests. I'll ask Laurent Puy-Barret, head of the Technical Health and Safety Department at FECIME, to please join us, as well as Dominique Chevillard, Technical Research Director at the FNTP. I was thinking we're missing the little jingle, the little music to give you time to get settled. Welcome. You were, I believe, co-rapporteur for the decarbonization roadmap. And one of the topics that was selected is indeed what we call alternative fuel. Alternative fuel meaning applied to the industry. What does that look like? Alternative fuel.
Thank you, Raphael, for bringing up this roadmap again on decarbonizing heavy vehicles, because, as Pascal said earlier, they invited 2 of us and 5 of us showed up. And that really struck them. They told us we moved very, very quickly thanks to that. And so we were able to reach a conclusion, whereas initially we were offered a solution that to us made no sense. The people from the Ministry of Ecological Transition did indeed listen to us. They heard us when we said for small ones it'll be electric, for big ones it'll be biofuel. The line between small and big is blurred depending on the equipment, the manufacturers, and the type of site. When you're in the middle of Cantal, a department dear to my heart, it's not the same as being in the middle of Paris.
So we have electric on one side, clearly. We have biofuels, or alternative fuels on the other. What are they? Biofuels, alternative fuels. What do we put inside them when we're in your sector?
Well, that's an excellent question, and that's exactly the topic we tried to address at Synergic. As Dominique mentioned, 5 of us actually worked on this roadmap. The idea was to find the various possible decarbonization paths for these machines. And so we found 8 areas after all, which is quite significant. And among those, we started with a bit of a surprise for our partners, which was to say we're going to decarbonize our machines with combustion engines. So there was obviously some amazement among those around us, but it's true. We can do it. And why? Because first of all, the machines, combustion engines, internal combustion engines have made huge progress in the fight against pollutant emissions. Over several years, we've managed to significantly limit the pollutant emissions from these engines. And today, in the latest stage 5 generations, we see that fuel consumption has also decreased, which naturally leads to reductions in emission factors, quite significant between 10-year-old machines compared to the latest generations. We're looking at gains of around 10 to 20%. And if we also power these engines with low-carbon liquid fuels, well, we double the benefits. Because then we also benefit from this reduction in emission factors, which can be quite substantial. It depends on the inputs. So that brings me to your question.
So what are these famous fuels that we can put inside?
Right, to answer your question.
HVO, I imagine?
Well, we'll get to that, of course.
B100?
Well, in fact, when we started working on the subject many years ago now, as we mentioned, within Synergic, manufacturers had investigated several different directions. We talked a lot about B100 at the start, even if today it's mostly geared towards road transport. So those solutions were presented to us. We had other solutions, XTLs, which are synthetic paraffinic diesels, arriving alongside HVO. So we looked into it, and as far as I'm concerned, regarding technical regulatory aspects, we tried to see what would help manufacturers determine the best solution. What is ultimately the best fuel or biofuel? Several aspects. Our manufacturers are international, so it needs to be a fuel that is available internationally. It has to be relatively stable. We're on construction sites in quite complex environments with significant temperature variations, low and high. And so gradually, by looking at the physical-chemical characteristics of all these fuels,
we ruled out certain fuels.
We ruled out B100, to put it simply, and we arrived at HVO, which remains the most interesting solution because it's also very close to petroleum diesel chemically and in terms of standards.
That means HVO is currently the leading option. Is this something that applies to all machines then, or only to large construction equipment?
Well, yes. Of course, as we said, the solution is multi-energy. Electric power, as presented, is obviously more geared towards compact urban and medium-sized machines. We're now reaching 20 tons with electric power, no problem there. But we still have some difficulties with energy storage on the battery. So internal combustion still has a role to play in the mid-range and high-end segments. And now, the good news is that HVO, as I mentioned, because of its physical-chemical nature, we can finally offer this solution for 99%. I won't commit myself. There'll surely be one model that isn't available, but almost 100% of the combustion models offered today are compatible with HVO.
Dominique, what's the benefit of HVO for you?
The benefit of HVO is that, first of all, it allows for a gradual evolution. We know that our machines, especially the largest ones, operate for 10, 12 or 15 years. So by gradually enriching off-road diesel with HVO, it allows for a progressive decarbonization. And the second very important factor is that HVO, like off-road diesel, is a liquid fuel. We call it a low-carbon liquid fuel, an LCLF. Whereas indeed some have considered gaseous fuels, which increase the number of transport trips. Because the energy density is really not there. This is a very important factor. I'll remind you, our construction sites are located anywhere in the landscape. And to go back to what Julian Beideler said earlier, for public works, machine fuel accounts for roughly 10% of a site's emissions. We have 60% from materials, 10% from transport fuel, and 10% from fuel for construction machinery. It's still a significant portion, and that's why we can do it gradually, with a tapering effect without a sharp cutoff afterwards.
Where exactly does this HVO come from? Can we ensure that it is specifically reserved for the building and public works sector?
The National Low Carbon Strategy, which is currently being finalized and approved, does specifically mention that for heavy construction machinery, HVO is particularly difficult to replace. It comes from a specific petrochemical process, but there's good news about that because it competes with aviation and shipping, which is that in the production of SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, there's what's called fatal HVO. Meaning that depending on the process, 10 to 25% of the fuel produced will inevitably be HVO.
So in SAF, we can recover that part for the...
In the process, when you produce SAF, you necessarily produce HVO.
And can that part be redirected?
And that part can be redirected. There is, of course, a question of cost. Regarding cost, the price gap is currently 15 cents thanks to tax incentives. But without tax incentives for now, it's double the price as long as there's capacity. If there's an increase in demand for capacity, the gap could widen.
Yeah, that's currently the hurdle for the adoption of HVO in the sector.
But even before getting to this price issue, which is very important, you're right, Dominique, there was also the need to stabilize the regulatory environment. And this is something we've been working hard on for many years now, notably through a government advisory body called the RUPA. We're a member, and it's allowed us to represent the manufacturer's voice to achieve a number of gains. Now, obviously, these gains, as we can see today, are always on a medium to long-term scale. Nevertheless, we've achieved several things, like the widespread release of HVO for our machinery, since we've gained the ability to have what we call ship-to-ship, meaning direct delivery on site from a delivery truck to the machines without needing our own logistics, which has removed several hurdles. For construction sites, especially mobile ones.
So easier refueling and wider distribution.
Absolutely, of course.
You can also go to a station to fill up on HVO.
Well, yeah, HVO, you're right. In a way, it's a great fuel because it's been deregulated, including for road vehicles, and is now also available at stations for vehicles. Our constraint, as we've started to say, is that the solution must be sustainable. I mentioned a stable regulatory environment. Availability is also necessary. That's another major challenge for us because obviously manufacturers can move forward on several issues, provided they have a relatively stable environment that can be replicated across different countries, at least at the continental level.
But that's the good news. It's compatible with engines and has global distribution.
Absolutely, that's definitely the good news. The price, it's always the same. So that comes down to taxation. And the stakes are high here as well. We're also trying to exert influence through the RUPA advisory body to change taxation levels, simply called the green TICP in France, for these fuels, so that, as you mentioned, we don't have too large a price gap, or even better, we're trying to converge toward current GNR rates.
The price remains a topic today, Dominique.
It's certainly a topic since margins in construction and public works aren't necessarily very high. But I still hear more and more members telling me they're very happy to be able to decarbonize this way and that their clients are happy. Plus, since it's a better refined fuel that's much more stable, we save a few decibels and reduce some pollution. That's not insignificant in addition to the CO2. So yes, it's a fuel we need to move forward with. We need to succeed in having a portion of it reserved for us. And that's the work we're currently doing with the authorities, with the SGPE and with the DGEC, the General Directorate for Energy and Climate.
If I follow you correctly, today, HVO for global manufacturers will finally allow them to agree on fleets, so they aren't forced to adapt based on the choices made by whichever country they're delivering the machinery to. So there are a whole host of arguments in favor of HVO.
For this fuel, of course, that was actually one of the factors that led us to rule out B100, because for our machinery, major modifications were out of the question, especially regarding post-treatment. I won't go into too much detail, but there's a lot that needs to be done if you want to work with B100. In terms of certification too, why is it that today most products are available in HVO with the engine? It's because to certify an engine today, you have to certify it against a fuel, a reference fuel today. And we're lucky because HVO, from a standards perspective, is compatible with these fuels, meaning we can certify engines today quite easily for HVO operation. And finally, this fuel being very close, once again, chemically to petroleum fuel, it doesn't require any major adaptation or heavy maintenance. And that's important for users too, to have maintenance that's fairly consistent. And at the same time, we must realize that on a job site, we won't always have permanent access to HVO. We'll have to mix it with other fuels, like GNR in particular. And these fuels need to be as miscible as possible.
One last question, and I'm turning to you, Dominique. You said we've reached 5. There's an upcoming meeting. Will you reach 5 in March as well? What's the goal of the next meeting? To move the subject forward, accelerate, get results on taxation. It's taxation, but first, availability is what matters most.
To be sure that we can actually have the amount of HVO we'll need over the long term, knowing that we also can't have a price war over all this, because the price war is with aviation and the maritime sector. The price war is also with Germany, Norway, and so on. So there's all this work on competition while being careful. The major advantage of HVO over electricity is that if I want to start a job site tomorrow, somewhere I just order the HVO. With electricity, generally, there's a 1 to 2 month wait or even more for large sites. That's an important point. And in Oslo, there's a question about that. We'll have to talk about it again. It takes time to look at each other. HVO is available immediately.
We'll see where the file stands. Between April 21st and 24th, 2027, it will have surely moved forward.
We hope so. The challenge of decarbonizing construction comes at that price.
Just one last word to conclude, if I may. We're lucky to have a major speaker from Total Energies later. We already have plenty of questions coming out of this roundtable, so it'll be interesting to see the answers, especially on sustainability.
Yes, that will be early this afternoon with my colleague Emmanuel Le Chypre. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us to give us an update on this issue of biofuels.